Welcome back. In this video we're going to explore a website called Pearltrees.com, and Pearltrees is an alternate method of organizing online resources. By now we know that there are many of these, and that very often they serve two purposes. And one is to collect your own resources in a way that's particularly comfortable or useful to you, and also to access other people's resources, which is really the hallmark of the different social media venues. So to access other people's resources as a means of gaining information. So let's start by creating an account. When you first go to pearltrees.com, there is going to be a join or a login option. So fill out your information and join. So I've completed the username, an email address, and a password. And it will bring you to a screen that explains to you the difference between a free account, a personal account, or an advanced account, and the price ranges, what's involved, etc. So one thing you'll notice is this public option is not really an option on a free account. So what you post, if you decided to use Pearltrees and actually create resources, that those would be public to anyone. Okay, but I'm going to choose to go public. Okay, I can optionally add my real name or a mini bio. I can choose an image if I'd like, but I'm going to skip this step for now. There's also a web clipper that allows you to easily add things to Pearltrees, and if you're going to use it, that's probably, a good idea. And you can see that that's a Google Chrome extension. And when you install it, it's going to appear in your bar up at the top as a little star. They're going to give you a short introductory tour. And then you'll arrive on your home screen. Okay, the controls are fairly simple. The first icon in the upper left is for your account, and this is where you can see how much space you've used, if you're collecting, if you are in fact collecting things yourself. Most important thing down here I find is the more at the bottom is actually where the logout is hidden. So if you want to log out of the site, this is where you would find it. The second button brings you to your collections. Let me just get rid of this menu bar for a second. And you will see that in a moment, but as you either make or identify collections you wish to follow, they'll appear here, and that'll be how you get into them. And then the third icon is for your network, and this involves teams you could be working on, subscriptions, connections to other people in Pearltrees. Not something that I tend to use, but I guess people who are really involved in this process may. Now a second set of buttons or options appears further down on the page. The first is to add, so something you can start a collection and add to it. The second would be to edit a collection, and then of course you have an option to share. And all these tools involve you creating resources. But this tool up in the upper right, this search box, is extremely useful for you to mine resources or to find things other people have put together. So I'm going to type in GAFE or Google Apps for Education and do a search. Now these are different Pearltrees, that's what they're called, or collections of information people have put together. So each of these is a collection, not a single thing. Some have very general titles like GAFE, so I'd have to explore. Some are a little more specific, so this seems to be focused on the use of Chromebooks with Google Apps for Education. So let's try that one. When you first click on it, the elements of the Pearltree are going to open up. And when I click on the first one, it's going to come into a larger screen. It's going to open up, and I'm going to have arrows to advance through the different resources in the Pearltree. So I can go forward to the next resource, I can go back to the prior resource. If I want to see what's actually here, this is a summary or a visual representation, I simply click on it. It will open in a new tab. And the resource that they've identified here is something called flippity.net. And what does it do? It easily turn a Google spreadsheet into a set of online flashcards. Okay, this is something that's new to me, but this is honestly something I'm going to look into. Let me close that window for a second, and I can advance to my next resource. This appears to be a Google Doc where someone has created some links, and let's see. Let's go into it and see exactly what it is. Okay, so there's a date, there's a topic, what is a Chromebook and what do they do? There are some notes about that, and then there's some training extensions on the right. So this is somebody's chart, probably who's providing training on these things, but obviously there may be links in here that are useful to me as well. Cheat sheets, guides, and useful links. Team Google Apps. Now if I click on that, it brings me to a different Pearltree. So what happened there is amongst the resources that that person had tagged or added to their Pearltree, someone else's Pearltree was attached. So that's one option you would have in creating them, and it's just also something to note. If I found this one particularly useful and the other one not, that I could add this to my collection instead, or I could simply add the other one. For right now, let's go back using the home. I'll do my search again. And I was in this one, so let's jump to this one. I do not have to enter on the first resource. So this is the resource I was just on, and you'll notice that in the upper corner it's got a little arrow. And that's telling you that those are actually other Pearltrees. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This person has linked to 4 other Pearltrees as well as their own resources. See, and I could use that to Google Summit, Google Labs apps. So actually contained within this single Pearltree, and I'm back to Flippity, so let me just close it. Contained in this single Pearltree, there seems to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 resources, but amongst those 10 resources are 4 that include a lot of other resources as well. Now if I've identified this as a Pearltree that I would like to keep track of, there are 2 buttons up here that are particularly useful to me. One is the Add This Collection, and that will put it in My Collections. And the other is Related Collections. So let me start by adding it. I can do some organization here. I can add different categories, etc. But for right now, I'm just going to put it under Ramapo EdTech, and now I am subscribed. So now when I go home, instead of being blank, you can see that this is my first collection, and I'm following someone else's. If I click on it, it brings me back. Now that I'm here, I'm going to use Related Collections, and these are collections related to GAF and Chromebooks. So these are other resources I could look through. You can see not all of them. Maybe this has to do with Chromebooks, but perhaps not specifically. It's going to do its best job possible of identifying related materials, but as with all searches, they may not be perfect. So there's one on project-based learning. Let's see what that has. Check out that resource. And there's a presentation on project-based learning. I'm not going to wait for it to load. Oh, here's an article in Edutopia. Good site. Lots of nice information in here frequently. and perhaps I go through and I decide that this is not particularly useful to me. I can use this back arrow to return to my previous screen. That's pretty much the same at this point as the browser back arrow, but a little more conveniently placed. Note that this button is turned to a check mark, and that's simply indicating that I can't add this to my collections because it's already been added. Okay, I'd like to do a search on a totally unrelated topic. I search for photography. I come up with lots of resources, and I like this photography lessons. Now perhaps I want to add this to my collections, but it doesn't really belong in the same place. I'm going to add it, but now instead of adding it to Ramapo Tech, I'm going to add a new collection because this is just of interest to me. It's going to be called photography. I can give it a little description. Notice there's a team up button. If I were to click that, I would be able to add, now I've just clicked the help, but if you were to click it, you'd be able to invite people to collaborate on this so that more than one of you could work on the tree at the same time. I can change the image if I have a particular image I'd like to use. And if I was paying for the service, I could choose to make it private. But I'm just going to add this. Okay, so now when I go home, I'm going to notice a slight difference between these two. At first appearance, they look exactly the same. This one, however, is a container for additional resources, while this is directly linked to a resource.